your ass.
This country wants to keep me down. Keep everybody weak.
It's our mission to bring back the natural order of things. Guys, thing.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
The ultimate male versus the ultimate meatball.
I'm not talking about that unleaded, gold-friendly, tree-hugging, girly jiggling money.
Don't get a sucker no statue. Give him guts.
You play ball like a girl!
You're in no man's land now, baby.
One ugly motherfucker.
Truck driving, low riding, belching, fighting, folding money.
Hey, dude, let me tell you something, you low time flying 4-point sack.
You're hit. You're bleeding, man. I ain't got time. You need us jar opening, oil changing, spiders squishing, furniture rearranging men.
What are you? Some chavala or something?
Oh, yes. Oh, man. Welcome to episode 3 of Men Rule the World. A little few technical difficulties here. I don't know. Maybe there's some hating-ass women that did not want the men to come on here to rule the world. But the men are here, and we are here to rule your world. Gosh, it's great being one of the boys, man. Shout outs to everybody who's tapped in. Let's go ahead and let's get a man in here. This guy eats nails for breakfast from Two-Face Entertainment. One, Mr. Fred Segura.
What's up, my brother? How you doing, man? Good to see you. Good to see you, man. It's good to be on here.
Good. It's good to be a man, Fred.
Right? It is. It is, bro. You know what? It just... You know what? I was going to say something else. No, it's good to be a man. No, it is. It is, bro.
It is, man. It is. And this next gentleman just oozes with machismo from San Jose. One, Mr. Robert Anthony.
Hey. Right on, brother. Right on. What's up, Robert?
What's going on, fellas? Hope everybody's well. Real quick, man. I was having a bad morning this morning. And then I thought to myself, at least I'm a man.
There you go.
And everything was all right.
Right on, right? Hey, that's what, you know, whenever I feel down, bro, that's what I tell myself. Hey, at least I'm a man.
Sir. At least I'm a man.
Oh, that's so good, boy. That is so good. I love it, man. I love it. Just hanging out with the boys, man. What's up with Artie Familia? OG Trucker Fonzie, what's going on, my brother? Keep it between the lines and keep the rubber side down, driver. Two-Face Entertainment's in here.
Yes,
let's see. Andrew, shout out to everybody. What's up, Derek, out there in Minneapolis, I believe it is. Let me see. Those clips of them old school movies was a hit. Oh, dog, man. That is our official intro for Men Rule the World, man. It glitched a little bit, which I don't like. Dang it! I don't want to shorten it up. Let's just get to it one more time. I just want to let's see.
I love it, bro. I love it.
Let's see what we can get without a glitch. Let's see.
All right.
Kick your ass.
This country wants to keep me down. Keep everybody weak.
I don't want to have to change this, man.
I wonder if I can kick your ass.
This country wants to keep me down. Keep everybody weak.
It's our mission to bring back the natural order of things. Guys, thing.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
The ultimate male versus the ultimate meatball.
I'm not talking about that unleaded, gold-friendly, tree-hugging, girly jiggling money.
Don't get a sucker no statue. Give him guts.
You play ball like a girl!
You're in no man's land now, baby.
One ugly motherfucker.
Truck driving, low riding, belching, fighting, folding money.
Hey, dude, let me tell you something, you low time flying 4-point sack.
You're hit. You're bleeding, man. I ain't got time. You need us jar opening, oil changing, spiders squishing, furniture rearranging men.
What are you? Some chavala or something?
I might have to cut it down, man. It's just so it doesn't glitch much, man. Gosh darn it, man. All right.
That tombstone foursome is sick, though.
Yes.
Isn't it?
The four guys from
Yeah.
Tombstone, they
Yes.
look bad, bro.
Gosh,
They look
It
badass.
looks
bad.
good, man.
That
The mixture of everything. He even got the
Yeah.
outsiders in there, the Rumble
I like
with the
that.
outsiders, and
I like
it's
Yes,
good.
I got the outsiders in there. Yes.
Yeah.
Stephanie, what's going on, homegirl? Keep it between the lines, girlfriend.
Salute.
Got no problem with the ladies tapping in. Got no problem with the ladies tapping in. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, fellas, we cover just everything when it comes to men, and sometimes it's a good time, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's serious, sometimes it's joking, sometimes it's something that's a little too serious, man. Where do we land today? Last time we talked about restroom etiquette. That was a great time.
Definitely.
Unfortunately, a little bit of a bummer. We're actually get touch on something that's pretty serious. Okay, it's pretty serious, and not too many people really bring it up, but it is spreading, and the numbers keep getting higher and higher and higher. And let me take this down. Okay, it is getting higher and higher and higher, and that is the suicide rate for men. Suicide has always been a thing, but the rate, especially for men, I was reading a article where many years ago, the rate between men and women were pretty parallel, but now it's blown up exponentially, and there's a huge chasm with the suicide rate between females and males. Men are really taking themselves out at alarming rate, and I think it's 4 men for every woman that kills themselves. Now we're gonna go ahead and watch a few things here so they can explain it just a little bit better and show a little bit of a graph, because it all goes through age groups and a little bit of a timeline. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and pass it around to you guys. Fred, where do you stand, brother? And, have you heard about this? And just what's your thoughts on it when you hear about, hey, you know what? I don't know if you know, but dudes are killing themselves at an alarming rate, man. Like, what's your thoughts on it just overall before we get into it?
You know what? I haven't really heard of it, but unfortunately, I lost a friend to suicide, bro, and it's just I think it's just an unfortunate thing, bro. I think it's the pressures of life itself, and it's a lot of things that I think we'll get into later, so I'll refrain from that right now. But I think a lot of it is just the pressure. I think a lot of it has to do with mental illness as well, and sometimes it's just how they're made feel by everybody else, and we always tend to feel like, at least in my situation, I felt like you could have called me, but these people are already set to do what they're gonna do, bro. Like, oftentimes, I'll refrain from saying that, but I'm just saying they already are set to what they want to do, bro. And sometimes it's a scream for help and we don't listen. That's all I'll say about that part, bro. But I have not heard about, a lot of the, suicides going on with men right now. This is the first I hear of it, to be honest.
Yeah. You know what? Shouts to Artie Familia. Artie, I remember you called me, carnal. I remember you called me. I remember that conversation that we had, brother. Yeah, that's a very unfortunate thing. Robert, you've worked with youth, and now studies have come out, and we'll get to some of that. They'll break it down in age. That that's gone up a little bit. What's your thoughts when you hear about men, young, old? It's starting to go up, and it's been going up, and it's starting to turn into a problem here.
Well, first of all, anybody who tunes in tonight, just we're going to try and be as respectful as we can with this conversation, because it is a serious conversation. And if anybody has gone through something where they had, or the familiar was just talking about his brother. My condolences to everybody, man. I could see you not being able to get over it. So to anybody out there watching who's lost somebody, man, my heart goes out to you. Unfortunately, I have heard of this, and I have heard of it being on the rise. And I think, before we're going to get into a lot of topics on reasons why, but I think one of the main reasons why is something like this right here, man. We don't talk to each other. We don't. Men find it almost a form of weakness to start telling people like how they're feeling, and we got to you got to reach out to your brothers, whether they're your brothers being natural brothers, or whether they, maybe you go to church, maybe they're your brothers in God, in Christ, maybe they're friends that you grew up with. You got to start reaching out to them, because once you pull that trigger or hang yourself or take whatever your means is to kill yourself, there's no coming back from that. And maybe a conversation could have helped you, but it saddens me. It saddens me when I hear anybody committing suicide, but the alarming number of men who are committing suicide, man, it truly saddens me, because there's no point of return. There's no let me do it over. You know what I mean? And to anybody out there, man, I just want to let you know, man, that I know, I don't want to make this a biblical thing or anything, but I do know one thing, man, is that after rain, there's always sunshine. Always. And that's not Robert Anthony saying that. That's the promise from God, right? Whether you believe that or not, but there's just, it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. So if anybody's listening tonight, man, and you're going through something, you're struggling, just know that we're all gonna have our rainy days. Some might have a few, some might have a lot, but it's gonna get better, and eventually there's gonna be sunshine. Hold on for it. Hold on for it.
Yeah. When I first heard of this, so many thoughts went through my head, right? So many thoughts, and some of the stuff that you said, Robert. And then I started thinking into it a little bit more, and I'll give my thoughts as we go on. But something that you just kind of finished off with right there, suicide is it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah.
It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, So it sucks. But let's go ahead. Let's check out this video. I got some audio as well. We're gonna check out this video, then we're gonna go to the audio, then we're gonna go back and break down the video itself. But let's go ahead and let's check this sucker out right here. These are keys to men's suicide here.
The US faces a crisis in male suicide, with rates very high, 4 times higher among men than among women, and rising especially quick.
Real quick, there's a little bit of music in the background. I hope that's not enough to get kicked off. If we do get kicked off, we'll come back on here.
Quickly since 2010 among young men. In 2022, we lost 40,000 male lives to suicide, and then another 10,000 female lives. This is a big part of the mental health crisis that we see playing out, and it's one that's not getting enough attention, at least not yet. There's a higher risk of suicide among various groups in the US, and we need to pay attention to those gaps. So, for example, there is a higher suicide risk among older Americans, those who live in rural areas, for Native Americans, and for veterans. But the biggest gap of all is between men and women.
Hey, for everybody watching, if these graphs are passing by a little too fast, don't worry. We're going to come back and we're going to break this stuff down.
Suicide rates have ebbed and flowed over the last half century, as you can see here, but really risen since the late 1990s. There's been a 40% jump just in the last few decades. And whilst these are rates, that doesn't really tell the whole story about the scale of the problem. There's 40,000 male deaths a year at current rates. And that means that there's a man dying from suicide every 13 minutes. And if the male rate of suicide had been the same as the female rate of suicide since 1999, then there would have been more than 500,000 fewer male deaths from suicide. And just to put that in perspective, that's about half the number of people that we've lost in total to COVID since the pandemic hit. So the scale of the numbers here is really quite significant. This is a major public health problem and one that is growing. But there are some important differences here by age and by race and by geography, even across gender. And so the highest suicide rates are among older men, and that's also where we see the biggest gender gap among the over 65s towards the top end of the age distribution. There are also some pretty big differences by race, that the highest suicide rates for both men and women are among American Indians, where the rates are considerably higher than they are for other racial groups. Although we do also see pretty high suicide rates among white men as well, and a gender gap consistently across those different racial groups. And there are differences by area as well. One of the most striking findings from the suicide research is that men who live in rural areas are at considerably higher risk of losing their life to suicide than those who live in urban areas. And there are differences across states as well. Interestingly, the rise in male suicide has differed by age across different time periods. So between 1999 and 2010, you can see that most of the rise in male suicide was really being driven by middle-aged men, which is consistent with the story about deaths of despair and what was happening in the economy generally. But since 2010, the story's really changed quite significantly. You can see there's been a rise among older men, among the over 65s, but the really big increase since 2010 has been among younger men, where there wasn't really an increase before then. And so over the last decade or so, it's been young men that have been fueling the rise in suicide. And so if you take the 25 to 34-year-old age group, for example, there's been a pretty staggering 34% increase in the suicide rate just since 2010. So we have to think about age as well as trend. Behind all of these charts, there are, of course, thousands of individuals whose lives have been shattered by suicide, not only the lives lost, but of those around them, their family, friends, and communities. This is a public health tragedy that is unfolding before our eyes. But there's a lack of awareness sometimes around the issues of male suicide specifically. Of course, there are suicides affecting the lives of men and women, but with a fourfold difference in the risk. It is very important that we understand that this is something that does affect men, and increasingly young men specifically. Any good preventive healthcare approach has to start with awareness. And so just building understanding of the scale of this challenge is step number one. And that's something that we at the American Institute for Boys and Men are committed to doing in the years to come.
All right. Okay. So again, we're going to go back and we're going to break all those graphs down. But just right now, just real quick, overall, I'll start with you, Robert. You being a teacher that since 2010, it's gone up significantly with, young men. Any thoughts to that, Robert, on why that might be?
No, I don't. I think, just, of course, this is just, since we're talking about just something that might be, is that I think a lot of young people, like you said, it's a spontaneous solution. It's like, oh man, I'll just kill myself. And like we said, man, I don't think they realize the ramifications, right? I just think that they don't put everything in perspective, and it's just how can I say to make it sound better? It's just they're so quick to think that it's over, especially young people, where it's like, man, you got your whole life ahead of you, at 15 or 16 or something like that. It's just I wish I had a concrete, but I've never seen a person, who was young that I've dealt with who had been that severe off where I thought, like, man, this person maybe need help. The only thing that I remember that kind of stood out to me is there was a private school, and I'm not going to name it, but it was a very affluent private school, and I had heard that some of the young men, they were pressured so much into getting into an elite college that when it didn't come through, that they killed themselves. And I found that tie-in really, really weird, where it was like they killed themselves because they just felt the weight of the disappointment on them. The school, probably $60,000 a year high school. You're paying, that's more than a lot of state universities, most state universities, right? And then to not get to the pressure of the family wanting to get there. I have heard that, and even though that doesn't make sense to me, I could see a young person, when your parents are paying $60,000 for you, I'm wondering what that conversation is like around the dinner table, and when you don't come through, and when you don't produce, what it makes you feel like. So that's the only thing I've ever heard of. I've never been in a situation where I was like, man, I should monitor this young man. He seems a little, I've seen some young men who were going through it, but not to the point where they're like, you know what, man, I just wish I wasn't here. I never heard like a cry for help like that.
Right. Fred, any thoughts on why since 2010 to now the suicide rate has gone up significantly for youngsters?
Yeah, you know what? Kind of piggybacking off of what Robert just said too, though. I think, and I'll probably sound like a broken record, and stop me if I'm getting ahead of myself. But I feel like a lot of it is the pressures of life itself. With social media, we're expected to be, social media is a highlight reel. It doesn't show the struggle, So for somebody to really struggle through time, especially being that young, and I dare say, going back to if the kids are in sports, so on and so forth. No, second place isn't good enough. You got to be first or your last. Kind of all those pressures along life itself. To where what Robert just said, you get to where you're going to go to a school, you don't get accepted or you don't get to go. I mean, your world crashes down on you because your whole life you've been expected to, excel. That's how I'm looking at it. When it comes to the younger generation. That's really
what you touched on, Robert. There was this Asian kid. I didn't know him, but I knew who he was, and he committed suicide. And the word on the curb was this. Obviously, many years ago, the word on the curb was that he got like a C grade, so he ended up killing himself. Again, that was the word on the curb. Was that true? I don't know, but I remember everybody thinking about it like, damn, okay, nobody really thought too much about it. As I got older, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, well, maybe parents used to beat him or something. I got no idea, but whether that was even true or not. But let me go ahead and play this audio, then we'll get back to that video and break it down. But let's go ahead and get to this audio right here.
Thoughts about suicide as an option in human life are not
You guys hear that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Thoughts about suicide as an option in human life are not uncommon. Acting on suicidal thoughts is a different matter.
All right, so he said thoughts about suicide is not uncommon, but the act, that is a little bit more uncommon. Fred, have you ever thought about whacking yourself?
Never, bro. Never.
No? Not even like in a joking way or anything?
No, bro. Okay. I can't say. You know what? Even if I'm going through some very tough, rough patches in life, and I've gone through them, I've always had the mentality of like, I will never give anybody the satisfaction of of doing that to myself, bro. Because I've been through a tough patch, and Robert's right. Like there's sunshine. There's light at the end of that tunnel, bro. If you just keep going, bro. We all go through it. It's just part of life, But never have I even joking, bro. Like no. And unfortunately, I said a friend. I've had a few friends commit suicide, bro, and it's, I mean, it just in my mind, I can't wrap my head around it. It makes zero sense to me.
Okay. Okay. Robert, you ever thought about like, hey, you know what? I'm okay if it just ends for me now.
Never, ever crossed my mind at all.
Okay.
And just like you and like Fred, we've all gone through things. We never. I've always talked about this. We never know what the man next to us has gone through, right? Everybody's gone through, And if you haven't, hey man, good for you. You know what I mean? Just be aware that they might be coming, right? Because hard times are, they come to a lot of people. But if you haven't had to endure that, good for you, man. I'm happy for you. But even at my lowest, or when I felt, I don't want to say useless, but when I felt like, which direction am I going? What am I doing? I never felt like that, man. But I gotta say, one of the reasons why too. And again, I'm not trying to make this a biblical thing, man, or offend anybody out there in YouTube land. And I even feel weird having to say that, but you know what I mean. I was always. I remember being a young man and being taught, whether people believe it or not, I believed it, was that if you committed suicide, that you weren't going to go, that you wouldn't make it to heaven, that and that was something, I was my mom was a churchgoer her whole life, and when I would go to church, I remember hearing that, and it stuck with me. And I just thought to myself, like, not only am I going to, if you commit suicide, but my rationale would be, not only are you going to hurt all the people around you, and you don't get to go to heaven, or you don't get to see your. I just thought to myself, like, why go through all that when I could just say, you know what, let's grind this out, man. Maybe it's going to build some character. Maybe there's a reason I'm going through this, and everything we go through, there is a reason. So. I think that was my train of thought on why I never said, you know what, maybe I should do. Because, you start playing that mind game with yourself. You do it once, you do it twice, and the next thing you know, well, maybe I should do it. And then, you start planting seeds in your mind, man. The mind is very strong, very strong.
Yeah. All it takes is planting a seed and letting that sucker grow. I actually, on the other hand, I actually had thought about it. Not so much like killing myself, even though maybe at one point I was like, man, I don't care if I live or die, man, but there had been times in my life where I was just like, you know what, I'm cool, man, if I just check out. I'm cool if I just check out. I haven't felt like that in many years now. I'm loving life, you know what I mean? I'm like, good gosh, man, I really God, eventually one day I do want to, go home, but I'm actually living a good life, man. I'm really enjoying myself here. So give me some more years, please, Lord, but let your will be done. But yeah, no, there was times, man, where I was just like, you know what, man, I don't care if I just go, screw it, man, but like you said, Robert, all it takes is that seed to be planted. And if you start tending to that seed and watering it, it can definitely grow to something, man. So,
definitely.
All right, so let's go to this.
Thoughts about suicide as an option in human life are not uncommon. Acting on suicidal thoughts is a different matter. How can suicidal thoughts turn into a fatal action? Konrad Michel is professor of psychiatry at the University of Bern in Switzerland. Over the last 40 years, he has conducted hundreds of interviews with survivors of suicide attempts. The traditional medical model considers suicide to be a consequence of mental disorders, such as depression. Medical professionals therefore ask suicidal patients primarily about symptoms of mental disorders, rather than about their personal reasons for suicide. It is as if medical professionals and suicidal patients speak different languages. Suicidal patients often avoid asking for help, fearing they will be misunderstood or that they might be admitted to a psychiatric hospital against their will. Dr. Michel and Dr. Wallach have co-developed a new approach to understand the suicidal person. In 1997, they published a first case study entitled Suicide as a Goal-Directed Action. They found that the immediate goal of a suicidal person is to end a painful and existentially threatening inner experience. The alarm system responds to this existential crisis, as if the person was facing a lion. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, activates the stress system. In a state of high emotional stress, the emotional brain takes over, overriding the prefrontal cortex, the brain area responsible for rational problem solving. In a highly stressful condition, we can no longer think rationally. We start acting like a robot, with suicide as the immediate goal. Dr. Michel and Dr. Valak then invited patients to tell them about the background of their suicidal crisis. They found that the suicidal crises were often related to earlier negative experiences, such as separation, rejection, violence, and abuse. This left them vulnerable for similar negative experiences, triggering painful emotional memories. People tend to keep these unpleasant feelings to themselves, hiding behind a mask, pretending that everything is okay. This makes things worse. Talking to a trusted person about pain and shame is the first step to be safe. It is important to understand one's own suicidality and to know how to deal with future similar experiences. Brief therapies can effectively reduce suicide risk.
Okay. All right. There was something said right there that really caught my attention. And that was early trauma. Early trauma. Something that happened to you when you were younger, and it just kind of carried over to your adulthood. And, you know, it was just boiling the entire time and you never released it, almost like a pressure cooker, right? That, to me, I think is probably the number one. Again, this is just, you know, for anybody watching this, just our thoughts. You know, we don't know. But to me, that's what kind of makes the most sense, right? Something that happened in your childhood, whether you were abused, sexually abused, whatever it may be, right? That there was some sort of trauma, some scar, and you never dealt with it. You never faced it head on. You never took care of it. You never tended to it. And it's just there and it's just boiling and boiling and boiling. And you tend to probably think that, hey, you know what? It's not really a problem. It happened many, many years ago. And you think that to yourself that, hey, you know, there's nothing wrong with me. And next thing you know, you got that seed, like you're talking about, Robert, and you're tending to it. You're watering it, and then boom, you know, something like that happens, especially when it's something just with like a quick action, when you got alcohol inside of you or some sort of drug or something happens where you just like act with the snap of a finger. It's like, screw it, you know, and you just jump or pull the trigger or whatever it may be. But I think a lot of it, again, this is, you know, to the best of my knowledge, okay, I think a lot of it has to come with what happens as them being a child. I don't know if it's a grown man that had a really good childhood, you know, had a good marriage and everything of that sort, and then next thing you know, his wife leaves him and now he kills himself. I'm not saying that doesn't exist like that, but I think there was actually something more there. I think there was something more inside of that man that was scarred, that drove him to do that, because dudes are left all the time. You know, not every guy's whacking himself. I think there was something deeper than that. It was like, oh, you know what? He killed himself over a girl. It's like, okay, that may have been the final straw, but I'm not avoiding the big haystack that was on the camel's back already. Mm-hmm. You know, that broke the camel's back. But Fred, where do you stand on that?
You know what? Unfortunately, one of my friends, that was the case. It was a woman that he took himself out over. And you're right. You know, there was, you know, reflecting back right now when you were saying that, I heard him talking before, and sometimes he would open up and stuff, and he would be like, oh, you know, I was happy and yada yada yada. But this is years before he did that. You know, then he got happy again. He was with somebody else, and then all of a sudden, you know, he went ahead and did that. But I don't want to be, you know, I'll say it like this. What's the word I'm looking for? Again, like Robert, I don't want to sound preachy. You know, I don't want to sound like, you know, again, to anybody who does not believe, that's, you know, that's fine. But I believe that had he had some type of faith, you know, because he was an atheist, if he had some type of faith, it would have perhaps stopped him from doing that, you know. But you're right, a lot of it is for men that are being left, especially in today's world where we're being feminized, we're being like, oh, we don't need you. You know, it's a woman's world, but thank God I'm a man. When I wake up, that's what I say to myself every day. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you know, but yeah, man, really, I'm lost on that, man. It's a tough subject for me, man, to because I think about you know, I think about my friends, a couple of my friends that did that, bro.
Okay, all right, Robert, do you think that it's just, you know, something happened, you know, that not just so much like the wife left them, but you know, the stock market goes down, or he lost his entire savings, so he decided to kill himself? I'm more in the, okay, if he decided to kill himself or something like that, I believe there was something else brewing inside of him. Like I said, that may have been the final straw, but I think there was already a bunch of haystacks on that camel's back already. I don't think that somebody just loses their savings account and says, you know what? I had a great life. Let me just hang myself.
Mm-hmm.
Robert.
Well, you know, when they were playing that audio, I heard them saying something that I picked up on, the same thing that you heard. Some emotional trauma or some physical trauma from before. And it just, for some reason, my mind went straight to Chris Cornell. I don't know if you guys know who Chris Cornell is.
Yeah.
You know, Ed, know who Chris Cornell is?
The name sounds familiar.
Chris Cornell was the lead singer of a real popular grunge group in the 80s called Soundgarden. And then he actually took over this group that was also very successful called Audioslave. And Audioslave was like all of Rage Against the Machine, with the exception of their lead singer. They replaced him with Chris Cornell, and he was a huge. I'm talking. They were a successful group, very successful. Guy's a millionaire. You know, by all means, you know, pretty good looking dude. You know what I mean? I know a lot of females that I knew. They would always be, oh, Chris Cornell's so handsome and got all the money in the world, but something happened to him when he was young, and he never got over it, and he committed suicide. You know what I mean? So suicide doesn't care, you know, all these things that happen, like I said, when they go in your mind, suicide doesn't care if you have money, if you're successful, you know what I mean, where you come from. The same guy, his friend, and it's ironic, one of his friends, Chester Benefield, I believe his name is. I know his name is Chester. I don't know his last. He was the lead singer of Linkin Park.
Oh, yeah.
He committed suicide, and it was the same reason. But they were friends, and they would help each other out. And then I believe Chris Cornell killed himself, and months later, I guess Chester was like, I'm going to kill myself too. And he killed himself. But they had past trauma. They had both been, unfortunately, physically abused sexually as young men. And it was a demon that I just saw somebody put a lot of demons. And like I said, man, when those things are in your head, man, who knows what you could be thinking of? You know what I mean? And it's just, you know, it's you can see when you're asking questions, Fred and me and everybody, we're having a hard time struggling with this because it's crazy. It's crazy to, especially for somebody, you know, and if I'm not like I'm better than anybody, but especially for somebody who never wanted to take his life. It's crazy for me to fathom that your final solution or the thing that you want to do last is say, you know what, let me just kill myself. it never, and again, with all due respect to anybody out there, but it just never makes sense. You know, and like Fred, I had a friend who committed suicide, and you would have never known he was going to do that. Most personable, likable, funny, you name it. And when I heard that he had committed suicide, man, I couldn't believe it. But again, I didn't know what he had gone through. Or maybe didn't even know what he was going through.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, because I used to listen to Linkin Park. Who's the one that committed suicide? The rapper guy or the singer?
Oh, the guy who would sing, Chester. He was the blonde hair guy.
Okay, he had a bald. He had a bald head with glasses, didn't he?
Yeah, but he was also blonde in the beginning. But he was also bald headed with glasses. Yeah, that was the one.
Oh man, I honestly, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know
that. Not to on just another note. As a matter of fact, they had been dormant for so long. They just put the band back together, but the new lead singer of Linkin Park is actually a lady now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Even when you think about NXS and Nirvana as well, bro, and you look at people like Robin Williams, you look at people like Anthony Bourdain, you know, these are successful people, and you know, does money buy happiness? It clearly doesn't, man. These people took themselves out, man.
And the reason one of the reasons I brought that up is because, you know, we always think suicide is, oh, this guy lost his money or this guy lost all his this and that. These guys were millionaires. Yes. They could go out to wherever they want. They could be with the finest ladies of all shades and sizes, whatever they like. Well, you know what? I had a friend who, to me, man, when you're famous like that, man, it's like a regular dude like me couldn't even imagine going everywhere every night and somebody just wanting to hook up with me. But when you're a superstar, I just couldn't. You know, like when you know, at another day and age when it would happen, I was like, dang, what kind of cologne was I wearing? And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just like, what did I, you know? But I couldn't even imagine everywhere I go, a beautiful woman. Hey, there goes so and so. I want to get to know him.
Mm.
You know what I mean, but these guys got access to everything. But for some reason, there's a stigma on suicide, like it's when somebody's depressed or this and that. You know, some people are on top of the world and they still commit suicide. I'm not saying they're not depressed, but I'm just saying they have money in the bank, a beautiful this and that, any car they want to drive, eat at the best restaurants, and they still commit suicide.
Yeah.
So it's not just about.
There was that guy that had that show. His job was traveling around the world and just trying different food. I forgot the guy's name.
Anthony Bourdain.
Okay, he killed himself, and it was like, dude, your job was just like traveling around the world and just So I mean, the depression doesn't mean that, hey, you know what, you're living in the slums, you got no money, you got no girl, you got no. I mean, that's that could be some form of depression. But to me, always when somebody kills himself, I always kind of think like, okay, you know what? Something happened in this person's childhood as well. There was some sort of scar, something went on right there. I just don't think that it's like, oh, well, you know what? This person lost everything, or he caught his wife cheating, or, you know, something of that sort. And, you know, maybe there is somebody that just kind of, because most suicides are by firearm, are with guns. So maybe there could be just kind of this reaction if you have a gun in, you know, on your hip or something, and you see something and says, pow, I don't know, but I think most of it was already inside of them with scars that they didn't intend to. All right, so I want to kind of go through some of this graphics here that he was talking about.
And it's one that's not getting enough attention, at least not yet. There's a higher risk of suicide among various groups in the US, and we need to pay attention to those gaps. So, for example, there is a higher suicide risk among older Americans, those who live in rural areas, for Native Americans, and for veterans. But the biggest gap of all is between men and women.
All right, so if you guys see, going from left to right, the left, the smallest one, that is over 75 years old. You know, people that are that old that kill themselves. I don't see, when it comes to that, I will just kind of put that on somewhere on the list. It's like they got nobody. You know, maybe their wife passed away. They got no family. They just feel. I kind of think of Rocky Part 5, where Mick is telling them. I mean, Mick had already died, but Rocky's just remembering when Mick told him, "You know what, kid? You know, you get older, you lose your friends, you lose your family, you lose everything, you know, and you start thinking, wow, what the hell am I sticking around here for anyway, you know?" And then he told Rocky, "But with you, oh, I got a reason to stick around for, you know, purpose. That's what I'm looking for, purpose." And I think maybe people that reach that age that don't have a significant other, that don't have a lot of family around, all their homies, all their friends, they're gone. They don't really have anybody. They don't have a career. They're that old, you know, they're just kind of like, oh, what the heck am I sticking around for? You know what I mean? Like, what am I doing? You know, so I can kind of see that a little bit. This next one, I don't know if you guys can see the arrow, my little arrow right there, but all right, that is between rural and urban. More people in rural places commit suicide. We'll get to that in a little bit. Native Americans are on top of the list. That's an interesting one.
Yes.
Veterans, that I think definitely, and I want to pass it to you guys as well on this one. I think that one definitely plays a part in this when it just comes to PTSD, and not just PTSD, fellas, but as well as, is it CTE? The shots to the head, like football players and fighters, you know, guys that are in super duper physical sports that take shots to the head. That's all men doing that. Now, are there women that serve in the military that go out and see battle? Sure, but it's nowhere near on the percentage of the men that go out there and do it. So I think that does play a part, because it's mainly men that are in battle that come back all jacked up. And if they don't get the proper help, you know, a lot of these guys end up killing themselves. And when I was thinking about that, I was also thinking about the athletes that suffer a lot of concussions, a lot of damage to the brain, where later on in life, we have seen, and now there's studies showing that, hey, you know what? If a guy gets, you know, 2 concussions or something like that, yeah, he may be 29 and he may live through his 30s and 40s. But once he gets to his 50s or something, that's really going to come back to him. And some of these guys kill themselves. So when I think about those type of sports, I think like, okay, a lot of those guys are men. Fred, what's your thoughts on all that?
I mean, I think that I think you're right on that part. I mean, the one that really surprised me were the Native Americans that are high up there. I think a lot of it is too, though, like you said, not getting the help that they need, such as coming back from, say, being a football star, sports star, whatever it may be, you know. Coming back, and I know we haven't touched on the military, but you mentioned it, PTSD. It's a serious thing, and if people don't get that help, and it just gets worse, especially coming off of being at the height of let's just say your career, at the height of your life, and people not appreciating it, you know, treating you like whatever, like they do like a lot of the veterans get treated, you know. Sports figures and so on and so forth. You know, a lot of them are just out there now. You know, nobody cares. You know, they got used and thrown out like yesterday's trash. You know, so I think. Go ahead.
No, I was going to touch real quick on the Native Americans thing because Denise brought it up. A lot of these people, and I don't want to speak for them, but a lot of them, like, you know, they do drink a lot.
Yeah.
Some of them don't have jobs like that. You know, they're in their, you know, they're in their sections, and I think depression is high right there, and the crimes. I remember seeing a documentary on their crimes where like sexual assaults and everything just kind of go unnoticed because it doesn't make it off the reservation. So I mean, they got their little issues, man, that goes on in the reservations. But yeah, going back to this, Fred. Yeah, when I think about guys, a lot colliding of the heads and the veterans and all that, most of those are men.
Yeah,
most of those are men.
Well, I'll say this. Even I just saw, and I'm not joking about this. I just saw a thing with Johnny Knoxville today, and they're making a Jackass 5, and they asked him if he was going to be doing a lot of the stunts and stuff like that, and he said, "I cannot afford another concussion," which is crazy when you think about it. And you're right; it's men going out there doing all these crazy stunts or doing whatever, be it military, be it whatever the case is, sports, such as like even their own stunts, like in Jackass for that matter. Yeah, man, I just think it's
well, let me
kind of help,
Yeah, well, let me turn to Robert. Robert, what's your thoughts on it, man? With the veterans, the natives, well, just this chart in general.
Yeah, the natives ones. Like I said, I'm just I could see how people could tie that into drinking, but I don't know a lot about the natives because they're on a reservation,
Right.
and a lot of people. When it comes to natives, unfortunately, there's certain parts of the country where people see natives all the time. It's not a big deal. I can't count maybe 3 times in my whole life I met a Native American in California. I probably met some, and I'm not trying to be funny, but I probably thought they were Mexican, right? Because they get absorbed, right? So they're kind of out of sight, out of mind. So it's surprising to me with the natives because, I do know that the reservations, a lot of the reservations until recently because of the casinos and them being able to get some of that money, they were bad off. You go to some of those reservations, man, and they're really bad. They're neck and neck with any project in the worst part of a city that you've ever seen. Very poor. You know what I mean? So, Native Americans are like everybody else. I could see them going through the struggles that everybody else goes through. But I did want to comment on the PTSD. I do believe because of a lot of things that the war and all that, and since we've been we're all past Vietnam. None of us grew up watching Vietnam on the news, but we have seen the Iran, the Afghanistan, all of these wars that are going on. And man, you come back, you're not the same man. You're just not.
Right.
Thank God for the ones who are able to navigate and be productive and be resilient and live a good life and all that. But some guys come back and they can't handle it, and they're the ones who are doing the fighting. They're the ones who are killing people. They're the ones who are seeing things that we don't see. Fox, CNN, all these, they don't show us everything that we see or don't see, or things that they were pressured to do out there, and again, men are, the one thing that I will say is men, a lot of times, a lot of things are violent. Sometimes men solve their problems violently. Men go to, it's just a fact. There's more men on the streets than women, right? It's a fact.
Yes.
Yes. It's just a fact. There's more men in prisons than women.
Right.
A lot of things that we do, men are put in situations where, man, there's some things, some trauma that you're going to go through physically and mentally, where it just might be, it's just so much that it's just, it overwhelms a lot of people, man. And like I said, doing this, what we're doing now and talking about it, and, it's, the 500,000 men died. What did he say would have been the case if it was women?
If it was parallel with women, it would have been 500,000 fewer men that would have died.
Yeah. And that's a problem. And for there not to be a big deal about it, or for people to advocate more about it, it's shocking to me. It's shocking to me because it's happening. It's happening a lot. As we see through these graphs, it's happening through all demographics of men, again, all races of men. So for it not to be out of the forefront, it's shocking to me. It really is.
Let's continue with it. Go for it, Fred.
I was gonna add something to that, bro. I don't want to really bring this up, but for one, let me go back to the alcohol thing. Again, I don't want to say the alcohol has a lot to do with it. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. It's already in you, man. With whatever you've got, whatever emotional PTSD, whatever it is, it's already in there. The alcohol just enhances that. Will just bring it out. So when people say, "Oh, it's the alcohol," no, it's the person. Such as when that happens. With that being said, I have a relative that fought in Iran, or it was in Iraq, whatever the last one we had, and we sat around and we were drinking and stuff, and he showed me pictures of stuff where it looked like a simple tuna, like a tuna can, with like a whatever inside of it or whatever, and they would leave a white flag, like a surrender flag. That thing was a bomb ready to go off. See, to people like us, for ourselves, it's like watching a movie or whatever, or being told a story. For somebody that lived it, it's terrifying, And I say that because later on in the evening, this family member of mine really broke down, man. He really broke down. He started crying. He's like, "Man, I didn't think I was gonna make it back," and it just comes back tenfold, And I will say this: it comes back to the point of getting these people the help that they need, bro, before it escalates into either suicide or hurting other people, And I think a lot of them, I'm not just speaking for my family member, I'm speaking for a lot of people in general, bro, when it comes to these kind of situations,
We'll get to that, Fred. We'll get to the help and everything. Denise is asking, do I think more men or more women? Denise, I think you jumped on a little bit late, sister. We're covering it because by far more men are committing suicide at an alarming rate. So that's why we're covering it. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and play this right here.
Been the same as the female rate of suicide since.
Sorry, here we go.
And if the male rate of suicide had been the same as the female rate of suicide since 1999, then there would have been more than 500,000 fewer male deaths from suicide. And just to put that in perspective, that's about half the number of people that we've lost in total to COVID since the pandemic hit. So the scale of the numbers here is really quite significant. This is a major public health problem.
What I had seen is that globally, 70% of suicides is men, but in the United States, 80% of suicides are men. So globally, it's 70%, but in the United States, it's 80%.
And one that is growing. But there are some important differences here by age and by race and by geography, even across gender. And so the highest suicide rates are among older men. And that's also where we see the biggest gender gap among the over 65s towards the top end of the.
Okay, let's check out this graph right here. So the light green, which is this right here, these colors, right? The smaller ones, that's the amount of women that commit suicide.
Wow.
These long, dark ones, that's the men. And if you guys can see the age groups on the bottom, we'll go from left to right. The first one is 15 to 24, 25 to 34, 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 55 to 64, 65 plus. I mean, 65 plus, yeah, it's pretty far up there. It seems to be somewhat steady. It drops a little bit right here, but it seems like 25 all the way to right around 64. It seems pretty steady in that age group. It goes down to just a little bit here and here, but that seems to be the age group where they're suffering a lot. Like the 65 plus, I'm not really sure what that is. I can just speculate that. Look, I'll go ahead and say this, guys. Okay. And I don't want to bring, too much of my personal life in this, but, not too long ago, I, made a decision in my life that was completely life-changing, right? Both of you guys know what that is. And when I did that, I had a lot of men reach out to me, and they started talking to me about their marriages and how much they hate being in the relationship. And, a lot of guys that are just really, really broken and tired inside, but they don't know how to, get away from the relationship. They don't want to break up the family. They don't want to break up, even though their kids are older, right? Because I'm looking at this bar right here, 65 plus. It's not just, their kids are older, but now the grandkids, they don't want to go through that. They don't want to lose everything they have. They don't want to, the grandkids are going with grandma this Christmas. And now I really, a lot of broken men started reaching out to me, started saying like, damn, brother, just talking to me about like how miserable they've been for decades in their relationship. And yeah, man, you know what? If I really think about it and look at it, I can kind of see that some of these guys probably didn't really mind if they just died, I can definitely see how broken they were, and just like, heck, you know what? If I get hit by a car or something, I'll be happier off. I was able to see it. I didn't really think about it much at that time. But these other groups right here, it's a little bit younger. This one's a little alarming. 15 to 24 years old. I mean, that's a, gosh, man, that's a kid. And I want to fast forward to this right here as well, just so we could put it all together. So we got the age groups. Now we got the race here. Native American, again, the lighter bars, the light green, that is women. And see how small that is. Where the dark green, that is men. And we're going from top to bottom. So the top is Native American. I mean, these guys, yeah, they're really taking themselves out, man.
Yeah.
The second one is Caucasians, followed by white, followed by Hispanic, and finally Asian Pacific Islander. So this is the last one we'll go before I turn it to you guys. Let me see. Let me play it so the colors.
Research is that men who live in rural areas are at considerable.
Okay, so this is the areas that he's talking about. Now, it's kind of hard to see this little bar up here. It's kind of faded. So the dark green is the places where guys are taking themselves out more. So as you guys can see, California is actually light green. So California doesn't have that big of an issue the way Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Nevada. Something's going on in Oregon, because between California and Washington are somewhere around the same rate, where Oregon, right in the middle, the suicide rates are higher. Obviously, you got Montana, you got Wyoming, that's pretty dark. You get Alaska, that's pretty dark. That means those areas are really suffering with that. So, Robert, putting all that stuff together, man, what do you make of it? How do you make sense of it?
Well, I'm surprised to see it being those three states is the highest.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I was surprised. I would have, if you would have told us, hey guys, pick three states that you think would be the highest, I would have said California, New York, and Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And just because of they're so different, so many different things go on in California. You know, you got the poor of the poorest to the rich of the richest. You know, we all live in California. I remember in San Jose, I could be walking in a very, very nice neighborhood, cross the street and you'd see homeless.
Mm.
You know, so you got everything in California. So I would have thought those would have been the most states because I would have assumed more problematic things would happen. I don't know why a state like Alaska's got a couple big cities, but you know, maybe you know, I'm just very surprised to see that. Like I said, it's just you know, I would have thought it would have been California would have been definitely up there because so many things and there's so many complex and diverse and different this and that, and I would have thought it would have been California.
Yeah, I mean it's not to say that it doesn't happen in California. It's just showing where it happens more. But I mean, you know, it's
the population thing as well, right? There's so many less people in these states that it stands out.
Well, like you said, in rural areas it happens more. I mean, right. I guess doesn't mean that it doesn't happen in the cities or in the suburbs, but in rural areas where there's really not much going on. I mean, I guess maybe I can kind of see where it's like, you know, you would see something like, you know, Stand By Me or something, right? And River Phoenix, his character, you know, when they get back, he starts crying. He's all like, I'm never going to leave this town, am I, Gordy? You know what I mean? Like, he's so depressed, man, because, you know, he got his punk ass older brother that abuses him, right? But he feels like he got nowhere to go. He's a kid. They live in a small rural town in the middle of nowhere. There's nowhere to go. You know what I mean? Where's he going to go? Everything is super local. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody, you know, when somebody says something, everybody knows about it. So there's no neighboring town, no neighboring city, no neighboring anything. So I guess I could kind of see where it's like you kind of feel, especially if you're like in an abusive home or something of that sort, you kind of feel incarcerated. Like, I got no way out. You know, the only city I see is whenever I turn on television. So I guess maybe I can kind of, to a certain degree, make sense of it that way, Robert.
You're stuck. That makes sense. You're just stuck. You have no option. Maybe this is your best option, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see that. But you know, it's a trip, man, because I would assume for you, especially, you've probably seen this more than myself and Fred. I don't want to speak for Fred, but I'm assuming, you know, you get behind that truck, you know, you've seen rural parts of the country, and I bet you, have you ever just, I know when I've gone and seen some rural country stuff that's different than California, I'm like, wow, this is nice. This is cool to be out here. But I never take into the consideration that if you're stuck there, it's not as beautiful as you think.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
let me tell you guys this, man. Let me tell you guys. And Denise is bringing up weather. How about weather? Some of these places, you know, it's always cloudy, it's always rainy, it's always, you know, it's always cold. You know, maybe a little bit more inside. You know, maybe that could play some sort of part. But I will tell you guys this. Go for it, Robert.
I was going to say, you know, there is something to that, because I remember I had read or saw something somewhere where Seattle had a high suicide rate, and they said one of the factors was it rains all the time in Seattle.
Okay.
It always rains, and it's depressing. So there might be something to that, because I heard something. So if somebody out there in YouTube land can correct me, go for it. But I heard that Seattle had a high suicide rate, and the primary factor was because it rains all the time. It's depressing, and it adds to your, if you're being depressed, it adds to your depression.
You know, going back to what you said, Robert. Okay, yes, I've come across some small towns where, you know, certain towns that come to mind, some place like Van Horn, West Texas, you know, where I'm like, how does somebody live here, man? Like this is like, I mean, good gosh, are you kidding me? And then there's other towns where I've come across, it's like you're on this beat up road. I remember going through Kansas, and I just like this beat up road, man. It's like, good gosh, man, am I going the right way? And then next thing you know, you hit like a little town. You know, we're from Killer Cali, baby. You know, we're from the Wild Wild West side, you know, but if you grew up there and it was like, there was nothing for miles, it's like, how do you live here. Like there's no major road. I'm sure you guys are all waiting for the truck to come and make deliveries so you guys could get all your provisions. But it's like, I'm sure somebody growing up there, they feel incarcerated. I don't know where they're driving to. There's really, I mean, you stand on one side of the town and you see the end of the other side of the town, and it's in the middle of completely nowhere. And I'm like, wow, you know, so I think some people do feel stuck. And if they're in an abusive home or, you know, something of that sort, if they get some sort of shame in that town, it may be a little bit different than for us that are coming from you know, California, where, you know, it's a little bit more city. Like, yeah, you know what? Okay, something shameful here. Okay, some people are gonna know about it. Cool, whatever. You know, maybe I could just move, or in time it will be forgotten. But in super, super small towns like that, something shameful, I mean, I think you become the black sheep to the day you die, you know? Right. You see movies like that. But Fred, what's your thoughts on all these graphs, man?
Well, you know what? It's funny you say that. I've been on the road myself. When I've traveled, you know, outside of California, and I often ask myself those questions. Even in California, when I went through like Daggett, you know, and I went through Boron, you know, and I remember stopping at that little intersection in Boron, and I remember I asked a girl, like, well, where are we at? You know, like, what do you guys do out here? You know, like, it's just that is and I'm not even from a big city myself. You know, I'm out here in the middle of nowhere as well, but we're close by to, you know, like I said, Salinas and so on and so forth. But it makes me also think, like, what are you guys doing out here? You know, like, but here's the other thing too that I'll add to, for example, the like, say the North America, the Midway, the, you know, sort of the Midwest kind of states there. Let's just say somebody moves from California to get away from the drama, you know, or they fall in love and they end up moving out there or whatever, and then stuff doesn't work out. That also could be a thing too, though, that would cause them to just, hey man, this is it, it's done, you know. There's nowhere else to go. And it's like you guys said earlier, man, it's like you're stuck in a prison. You know,
you're saying if somebody moves out of California, goes somewhere else, and it doesn't work out for them, well,
yeah,
they can move back.
Yeah,
well, no, I'm saying, like, look, let's just go into the things where they say they bought a home or whatever the situation is, and they can't come back. Say, for example, you're not good in your hood or whatever the case is. You know, now you're stuck somewhere you don't want to be at.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Fred. I just think that your mind has already been opened up to another world, knowing that there's another world out there. But I think for certain people that were raised their entire lives in a super world, small town, they don't know anything else. Like, their whole world is, you know, them and the 200 people that live in their town, and there's nothing else around. I think if you were, you know, in New York and you go move to a small world town in Texas, I don't think that you'll get so depressed, like, oh man, I'm stuck here. I think your mind is already opened up to, it's like, okay, well, I could go somewhere else in due time, you know, whereas somebody, their entire childhood, they're just in a super small town. And we're just talking about small towns and everything simply because the stats show that in rural areas there are more suicides. Not to say it doesn't happen in cities, but let's continue with this, because this is and this is the last graph we're going to go off here. But
in male suicide has differed by age across different time periods. So between 1999 and 2010, you can see that most of the rise in male suicide was really being driven by middle-aged men.
Okay, so from 1999 to 2010, this was the graph. If you guys are able to see right here, 15 to 24, it's minuscule, man. Okay. most men that were killing themselves were 45 to 54, and right there with them was 55 to 64. So basically, we'll combine them 45 to 64. That was the main age group between 1999 to 2010. But now he's going to tell us from 2010 to now, there's been a big shift.
Which is consistent with the story about deaths of despair and what was happening in the economy generally. But since 2010, the story's really changed quite significantly. You can see there's been a rise among older men, among the over 65.
Okay, so the red, let me put it here where it got just a little darker. Okay, so the red, so the green, I'm sorry. Okay, so the red shows the graph of how much it changed from 2010 to 2022. So if you could see 15 to 24, you guys see this green little smudge right here.
Yes.
The red shows how much it's gone up since that time.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone up pretty darn badly, man.
That's in 2024?
20, that's 15 to 24.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now 25 to 34, look how much that's gone up from 2010 to 2022. Same thing, 35 to 44. Everywhere it's gone up. Now, 45 to 54, it went down this much. The red bar, that's how much it went down. Yeah, and plus 65, it went up. There it is, the red bar. It went up. So there's been some big
among the
change.
under 65s, but the really big increase since 2010 has been among younger men, where there wasn't really an increase before then. And
yeah, that's the two major increases. And if we combine them together, we'll say 15 to 34 years old.
So over the last decade or so, it's been young men that have been fueling the rise in suicide.
Okay, so we'll leave it there. Let's go ahead and put our beautiful faces back up here.
Cool.
That's alarming. Now I just kind of want to freeball it here because I do have a lot to say, man. Robert, what do you think the problem is? I know we don't know the issue. We can just kind of speculate and give, our thoughts. I got some strong thoughts that I think is going to rub people the wrong way, man. And I'm ready to explode. But I kind of want to hear what you guys have to say. Maybe you guys could talk a little bit of sense into me before I come off. But what's your thoughts, Robert? I mean, the young age, if we just combine them, 15 to 34, that sucker has shot up significantly.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I think there's a lot of factors. I think, especially for the young men, not having the nuclear family intact, not having a dad as a role model. I think that's huge. I'm whenever we have conversations like this, I'm always going to point that out, right? And again, a dad who's being a dad, right? A male role model, somebody who, not just any old dude, but sometimes any old dude will do, unfortunately. Right, but not having a dad, not having a role model to say, "Pop, I'm feeling this." It's and not to downplay, but a dad might be able to tell you, "Hey, son, it's just a girl. Get over it. There's another girl coming. I promise you." Right, but when you're a young man, you don't have somebody to have that conversation with. I loved her. She was the love of my life, and I'm not trying to be funny or make. If that offends anybody, I didn't go through that. You're right, I didn't. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but it blows my mind that you were in love with somebody once and they left you, and now you don't never want to be here again. That blows my mind. But maybe if you had a male figure in your life, somebody to talk to, they might be able to get you off of the ledge. Hey, come on now. You got this going for you. You got that going for you. So I think the nuclear family one is huge. A lot of young men aren't being raised by men anymore.
Thank you. Yes,
that's an issue. I wholeheartedly believe that. That's an issue. Second, it becomes one of those things where, you know, the young people nowadays, you know, a lot of quick solutions to things. This is, like you said, a bad solution to a temporary problem. I'll solve this problem. Where instead, they don't put the thought into it, the ramifications. You know, it maybe because so many young people have done this, it becomes almost normalized. You know what I mean? You know, Tommy killed himself, and, you know, man, he's better off now. At least he's not suffering anymore. Maybe I'll do the same thing. You know, but when it's all said and done, man, you know, I don't know. I wish I could say something where you guys could be like, oh, wow, what a great answer that was wrong. I don't know, because there's so many different waves and so many different things. What I do know for sure, and the one thing that I'll stand on, is that not having a man in your life is problematic. I will stand on that. All these other issues, man, I don't know. I wish I did so I could help. I don't know. I just don't. And I'm sorry if that's coming across like, oh, man, why'd you have this guy on the show if he's not? That's the truth of how I'm feeling. I don't know. It's bothersome. It's bothersome. And I don't want to play the game where it's like, well, I wonder if there were these many women committed suicide, if it'd be more to the national forefront. But since it's just men, let's not really talk about it. It's a problem for both. It just happens to be a major problem for men. And I wish I had an answer that somebody saw and was like, well, what a great. I don't. Because the rich, the poor, the white, the Native American, the black, the Latino, you name it, they're all committing suicide.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with the nuclear family, not having a father, and possibly some type of traumatic event that might have happened to them when they were young. Right. And unfortunately, you know, we're in that age group where we've seen things come out that, you know, a lot of people suppress. And then finally, once they get it out, it's arisen. You know what I mean? Right. So that's the best I could do tonight, Ed, on that, man. Like I said.
Okay. No, that was good. Denise, you don't have to use the word unalive, girl. We could say murder, death, kill here. It's America. I'm not coming down on you, Denise. I know a lot of YouTubers go with the unalive and all this other word stuff. No, it's America. We could say, you know, died or kill or murder or whatever. But Fred, or if you want to keep using unalive, that's fine. Fred, go for it.
No, you know, a lot of it too. I mean, Robert had touched a lot of on, you know, younger growing up without fathers and stuff like that, which puts me back into, because I've seen a lot of this pop up on social media as well. What about the fathers that are, you know, falsely accused? That are, you know, again, we've had this discussion before, where you go into the court system for whatever, a divorce and whatever, the man automatically is at a loss. So a lot of these men, especially if you think about it, if they're living in the rural area or whatever the case is, as Denise is saying too, with murders and, you know, turning the guns on themselves and so on and so forth. Let's just say there's a guy, you know, his wife is going to leave him. He doesn't make enough money. Whatever the case is, in today's world, men are being feminized. We're being, you know, made less of. We're not needed, and so on and so forth. That's the speech of a lot of people, and I think Robert hit it on the head. And I think it's one of the things that I think needs to be brought up, like straight up, because we're being outed, you know, as men. But the thing about it, the way I see it is like, say, for example, there's a guy, right? He's losing his home. He's losing his job. His wife is, you know, sleeping with a neighbor, whatever the case is. You know, he takes off down the street. He's angry for whatever. He's late to work. And if he's late to work, you know, he's going to get written up and he doesn't want to get fired. Whatever the case is, he runs a kid over that's busy on his phone as they're crossing the street, takes that kid out, bends the corner, and he takes himself out. These kind of things are happening, and to my perspective, as to what's going on, the weight of the world is coming down on a lot of people, and a lot of people can't take it. I figure in men, because especially men who are believed to be or believe themselves to be leaders, and to provide and so on and so forth. Say, for example, even like let's say, somebody's used to providing, they make X amount of money, monthly or whatever. They're the breadwinner of the house. Okay, you have an accident, you can't do that anymore. Now what? Now you're going through all this pain. It's just a lot. It's just a big old trickle effect, man. But it comes down to exactly what Robert said, man. A lot of it is too. There's no fathers in the home, and I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of the stuff that's going on today, man, and on social media, and people saying a bunch of things about false accusations about people who are long gone, and so on and so forth. Just destroying men. That's really where I'm at, bro, with all that. It's a hard subject to get into, bro. It's hard to really pinpoint, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, we can't pinpoint anything. We could just say what we think, and okay. So here's what I think. Okay, here's what I think. All right. For one, okay, so I interviewed somebody not too long ago. Shout outs to them. They took pictures of a photo shoot of me, man. Shout outs to my boy Shots Rich, right? And I remember he said something, and he had said something along the line that what I heard here tonight is like, hey, you know what? We're men. We're supposed to be tough. We're expected to just not talk about it and stay quiet and this and that. And I just kind of nodded my head. You know what? But it was ever since that. It was ever since that interview that I really started thinking about it, and I thought, is that really true? Because I'm not so sure. Because in reality, and now I'm sorry I get a little chip on my shoulder here. Because in reality, I don't think men in quite a few years have been raised to be macho. I don't think men have been raised to, hey, man, you know what? You got to be tough. Where? Men are more pussies today than ever before.
Exactly.
Than ever before. So, now I realized I was like, damn, I just became a bobblehead, man. Because when I really started thinking about it, I started thinking like, wait a second, man. Dudes are more sissy, are more punk ass levas today than ever before. I'm not talking about the streets. The hell with the streets. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about a man. All this, you know what? Us men, we're supposed to, we're raised to be tough. When? Where?
Yeah.
What's everyone talking about? I mean, maybe individually in your home, sure. But if you look at society as a whole, dude, the whole society is just feminizing dudes, man. It's cool to be feminine. It's cool. It's okay for a man to cry. You got a bunch of dudes just crying, and oh man, you know what? We're raised to be macho. I don't see that. Are you saying we were raised more to be macho now than back then the guys that fought in World War II?
Yeah.
How come those guys weren't whacking themselves? By the way, what's with all the medication? What's with all the depression? What's with everything that's being put into our bodies? Everything is medication. Everything is side effects. I watch commercials. It's like, oh, you know what? Take this for that. Take that. Oh, side effects. Mood swings. Dryness of the mouth. Side effects. All these side effects. Bleeding from the anal. Hey, contact your doctor. And it's like, well, wait a second. Well, what the hell is all this stuff that you're putting in your body? What is all this garbage? What's with all the easy fix to just popping a pill? And I'm with you, Robert. It all stems from family. Now, for those that say like, oh, wait a second, just having a dad doesn't. No, I'm not talking about just having a dad. I'm talking about having a good dad. I'm talking about mom and dad together who love each other. Not just we're gonna stay together for the kids. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about mom and dad that love one another and put an emphasis on their children. Nothing will cure that, man. Nothing will cure more than that right there. But if somebody gets sexually molested, if somebody gets abused, something of that sort, and it's just in them, they're scarred, they become promiscuous, they turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol, and eventually it just grows and grows and grows and grows. And next thing you know, yeah, they are considering killing themselves, or, hey, you know what? I lost my job, or, my hyena was cheating on me, or, I lost whatever it may be, or whatever. It's just boom, I'll just kill myself. PTSD is another one as well, man. I do believe, soldiers and cops, shout out to my boy, David Contreras. I do a boxing show with him every Friday. He's a former police officer, and he works with police officers that struggle with suicide. Yes, you see things and it could kind of mess you up. Absolutely. But I'm me, myself personally, and I could be wrong. I could be 1,000% wrong. I want everybody to know that. But I'm not buying into this anymore that, oh, you know what? We're raised to be macho. This is the most pussified era of men. So I got no idea what it was talking about. Now, I'm not saying somebody's telling you, hey, don't talk about it. Hey, first of all, I've never seen that. I've seen everybody say like, hey, you need to talk about it. You need someone to talk to you. I've never heard anybody say, hey, don't talk to anybody. You're a man. But secondly, if you have that strong father, if you have that strong male role model, if you have a strong man in your life to look up to, dad is supposed to be the superhero. Dad is supposed to be that guy where you can have that male bondship where it's like, damn, I want to be like dad. Maybe not career-wise, but you know what? I want to be like dad. The way he carries himself, he's a man of honor. He's a man of respect. People respect him. He walks with purpose, things of that nature. But when you start celebrating single moms, and it's just becomes so easy, divorce rate, which, by the way, I contributed to. I'm not excusing myself on all this. I contributed to, right? When divorce rates are sky high and it becomes normalized, and now you got, everybody makes it about the mom, where it's like, oh, look at that. She's a strong woman. She did it on her own. Hey, what about the kid? The kid was raised without a father. Yeah. Why are we making it about the moms? I'm not coming down single moms. I was raised by a single mom. But we come down, we leave the kids out of it. It's like, oh man, the woman, she's a superhero. That's a horrible message to send to other little girls that, hey, if you want to be looked at as a superhero, do it on your own. That's terrible. That is a seed being planted that's going to raise rotten fruit in her mind. That's not a good thing. But it happens time and time. And now you have women that are raising that have, by the way, this has been happening for years now. Yeah. Single moms that have been raising sons that do not have a strong male role model in their lives to teach them how to be a man. So all this talk about like, well, we're men, we're raised to be macho. I do not buy into that, man, because this is the most sissified era of men that I've ever seen. Let me go ahead and put out a picture, okay? I'm going to exaggerate. I'm going to exaggerate just to make a point, okay? Mm-hmm. Let's put us over here. Okay. I'm exaggerating just to make a point. All right. This is from the movie 300. Mm-hmm. The Spartans. Okay. Now, I wasn't really doing YouTube on my regular basis last year when the whole conversation came up. Who wins between 100 men and a gorilla? We covered that. That was a fun conversation we had.
Definitely.
But here's what I'm talking about, fellas. Here's what I'm talking about. Is that because I wasn't on YouTube, it doesn't mean I was having that discussion. I'm going to bring this full circle. If people think I'm going out on a rant, no, I'm bringing this full circle on the man's mind. Okay. Here's the thing. I was having this conversation off of YouTube, and every single time I brought it up, like, hey, who would win, 100 dudes or a gorilla? Every single time I was met with, Oh, as soon as everybody sees what the gorilla does to the first guy, everybody's gone. And I kind of thought to myself, wow, we have gotten so weak in the mind, because these guys that you see on the screen, these guys right here, I don't think they would have run if without the spears. Of course, I'm exaggerating. Okay, I'm exaggerating. This was a movie, but dudes back then, I was expecting from men, I was expecting strategy. That's what I was expecting. I was expecting strategy. I was expecting like, man, I think the gorilla would win, but if we had to, man, I think, maybe if 5 guys grab a leg, I was expecting strategy, which is what I think this image that shows, I think that's what they would be talking about. Win, lose, or draw, I think that's what they would be talking about. But over and over and over with this era of men, I was just met with, as soon as the gorilla does something to one guy, everybody's gone. Think of that. Think of the male mind where it's like, okay, guys, we got to take down this gorilla. Oh man, as soon as everybody sees what happens to the first person, everybody's gonna run. It's like nobody. That's what everybody's mind comes to as a man. Not, hey, you know what? Let's strategize this. Let's see what's the best way, and maybe we lose. But what's the best way? Now, of course, I was exaggerating there, but I was trying to make a point of all this. Hey, us men, we're raised to be macho. I don't think that's been the case for a while. And by the way, I want to make it clear. I got you, Robert. But by the way, I want to make it clear, okay? Being raised tough is different, okay? Oh, man, I was raised in the streets. Oh, man, my mom, she didn't pan me, man. My mom didn't, kiss my wounds or anything. That's not what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about, oh, you know what? Well, and when I fell down, what, you think my mom just babied me? That's not what I'm talking about, man. That is not what I'm talking about. You need a man, a real man in your life. This is why all these dudes from the streets that think they're super duper tough guys and everything, in reality, they're a bunch of high nuts, dog. I'm not talking about that they're sissies. What I'm talking about is that they can't control their emotions. That's why as soon as a discussion doesn't go their way, they're ready to fight. That's women tendencies.
Correct.
Jealousy.
That's yes, it's all women tendencies. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a good, strong man teach you the way. Hey, that's not how you act. Hey, don't act that way. And if you got something to talk about, you talk to your old man. And you and your dad, you guys sit down and you talk, and he gives you the advice. And he gives you that pat on the back, the punch on the shoulder, all that stuff that cannot be replaced by anything else. Not money, not child support. Nothing can replace that.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm no longer buying into this unless, there's some studies and I'm wrong. I'm not no longer buying into this like, oh, you know what? It's because us men, we're raised to be macho. BS, Holmes. This era of men is the most pussified era of being raised, and society as a whole, with politicians, with radio, television, commercials, everything.
Yeah.
Everything. There was that Gillette commercial where it's like, oh, boys will be boys. They're trying to stop boys from, 2 little kids were wrestling. And it's like, oh, we got to stop them. Hey, that's not how you treat each other. Because if you allow them to wrestle with each other, they're going to grow up to hit women. No, let the boys wrestle.
Yeah.
Let the boys roughhouse. A lot of the, I'm sorry, man. I got to give you guys a chance to talk. My apologies, man. Okay, let me just end it. Let me just bring it to an end here, okay? A lot of brute jobs are being taken away with technology. Okay.
Correct.
we as men no longer need to go out and hunt for our food. Okay. But that was okay because a lot of jobs were brute. There were building, there was, lifting. There was a lot of hard back breaking jobs out there that really gave you a sense of I'm getting something done. There's some of those jobs still do exist. Absolutely. But they're becoming fewer and fewer and fewer, with things that robots, forklifts, all that stuff. Heck, even trucking is becoming a lot more easy to drive a truck than it was once upon a time. It actually used to be a pretty tough job. Trucks are so luxurious now. And once upon a time, you'd come home with dust or dirt or grease or something on you. Like, that was a hard day at work. You know what I mean? And that was most men. Now, and I'm just going to go out on a limb here, fellas, and I'm going to end it right here and pass it to you guys. But I'm going to say most men that commit suicide, not all, but most that suffer from depression and commit suicide have a job where they rarely move. They're in a cubicle. They're in an office. They're staring at a screen all day. But I don't think the FedEx driver in the box truck that has 300 deliveries just jumping in and out of the truck. All right, scan it. All right, you got any pickups? Okay, let me load it up. All right, drive down to the next block. Jump out of that truck. Okay, here's your delivery. Let me scan this. Here's another one. Okay, let me, what else you got? Okay, I got to take this back over here. It's not always on the move. I don't think the construction worker, I don't think those guys are really whacking themselves. I'm not saying they don't, and I'm not saying they haven't. I'm simply saying that I think it's a larger rate when it's guys that work in a cubicle that are not really working with their hands, working from home, things of that sort, instead of getting out and about and moving the body. But I've ranted a lot, man. Robert, I know you had something to say, brother. My apologies, man.
Don't apologize at all, man. Last time I looked at this, it said the Cholo Trucker Station. So don't even. I'm serious, man. You got to see, man. We've always stuck to that. When we're talking, man. And I'm taking.
That's what it is. Hey, bravo to you, brother.
Look, a lot of medication, fellas. A lot of medication, a lot of vaccines, a lot of this stuff that just like, hey, side effects is this, side effects is that. Hey, take a pill for this, take a pill for that. Okay, what is the long-term effects of this stuff? And can you pass some of that stuff down to your child? I don't know, but go for it, Robert.
So just make a couple of points to go off what you were speaking about. You're talking about this generation being the most sissified generation of history, and we got to go back to why is that the case, right? Plain and simple, because there's not that family unit. Now, to every single mom in YouTube land or somebody who was raised by a single mom, we're not saying that a single mom isn't awesome and that she can't steer her son in the right direction. I don't think any of us will agree to that, because I know single moms who are awesome. But the bottom line is, as awesome as you are as a single mom, you cannot teach your son how to be a man because you're not a man.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? There's, just like a single dad who, by the way, doesn't get as much credit as single moms. When there's a single mom, everybody, oh my God, the single mom and she did this. But when there's a single dad, it's like, oh, he was okay. It's not the same. But that single dad can't teach his daughter how to be a woman. He can't do that. He wasn't designed for that. He could read some books. He could get advice, but he's not a woman. So all we're saying is having a family unit matters. That's all we're saying. That's all I'm saying. Let me not speak for anybody else. That's all I'm saying. It is a very big deal that a man and a woman who have children know their roles. that they're, like you said, that they're a unit that you're putting into the child, right? It's just, it's a no-brainer, you know. And then second, another thing that I wanted to say on this, you know, and you know, I'm trying to bring it back to the suicides, right? Because that's what we were talking about. But you know, as far as this new generation of men, you know, it's funny because a couple of things happened to me. I have a picture painting, and I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a pretty famous painting, and there's a bunch of men on like a bar because it's construction, like in the 40s.
Okay.
And they're all sitting on it about 80 stories up, and they're all sitting on it. You don't see any harnesses on them, eating lunch, having coffee. And you can, I would say that there's a lot of men who would go up there today and be like, I'm not doing that. But back then, you know, hard time, you know, there's that saying, hard times create strong men.
Yes.
Right? Hard times create strong men. And when there's a necessity, when you got to put food on that table, when you got a family to feed, when you got to do all that stuff, it matters. Got to go to work. You know, and then I saw, this is going to date me, but, you know, just to know, I know I look 22, but I'm older, but this is going to date me. I was watching, I don't know if it was, I'm not going to say what social media because I'm not giving nobody plug. Anyways, I was watching something on social media, and for some reason, I'm starting to get Little House on the Prairie reels. Does anybody remember Little House on the Prairie?
Yes.
Dad walking, you know, I have to go to work, you know, there's no work here. He walks 100 miles to become a guy who's breaking rocks in a rock quarry. His partner's holding the bar. Somebody's hitting the hammer. Another guy's blowing up rock with dynamite. Man, those were jobs, man, that, you know, I'm not saying a woman couldn't do it, but man, you had to be a man to do that job. You know what I mean? I think that's where we get those rugged image of men, right? Today, you know, and I'm saying this, I'm not trying to be funny, man. Today, I had a guy, a couple of friends from work one time, and I'm not kidding. There were other men teachers, and we were talking about, hey, let's do something, you know, to kind of bond after school, kind of, you know, outside of work. And we were thinking about going to see a movie. They lost me. They wanted to go see Barbie.
Wow.
And I was like, I thought they were joking. I was like, oh, yeah, let's go see Barbie. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, they're serious. You know what I mean? We'll go see Barbie.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right.
Unless Barbie turns into like this battle, you know, Jean-Claude Van Damme, you know, so she's doing some crazy things. You know what I mean? Yes. But men's mentality, you know, men's mentality is different now. You don't say that to offend somebody. Don't say that. You know, there used to be a time a man could speak his mind.
Right.
What happened to that time?
Well, I think that falls into that kind of depression as well, where it's like, I don't think men are being told to be leaders anymore. I haven't heard that. That's what I'm saying. As society as a whole, I don't think that whenever this comes up, I don't, everybody just kind of nods their head, and I was nodding my head as well. But no, I don't think men are raised to be macho and be leaders anymore. It's kind of like, hey, we're all equal. You're not the leader of the house, you know? And I see more women running the house than I do men. And I think depression can definitely settle in slowly. Because what's one of the big things that has really grown, especially for men, young men especially, video games.
Yes.
Video games have kept men at home. If we looked at that graph, that was combine those two graphs together, that has really grown from 2010 to now. That was 15 to 34 years old. Video games have really just kept men at home. There's no camaraderie between the fellas. Now, if you're going to link up with the boys, it's going to be, you know, with a headset playing video games, right?
Yeah, remember when we were young?
Okay, so there were video games when I was little, but if you want to play video games with your friend, you had to be in the same room.
Yeah.
You know, you had to be in the same room. And then after that, somebody's getting grab somebody in a headlock. You know what I mean? We're gonna wrestle now. We're gonna go outside now. We're gonna, do things like that. Where that's being taken away. And it's hurting men. I don't think men are being taught to be leaders. I don't think men are being raised to be macho. I think all that is just a bunch of window dressing now. It's hurting men more and more and more. And with the whole, single mom thing, it's kind of giving this illusion where it's like, hey, dads are not needed. So
Correct.
Mom is like, hey, I don't need that a-hole. It's just me and my kids. Okay, well, your sons, they're going to grow up one day, and there's going to be a woman that's going to say, I don't need that a-hole. It's just my kids, right? And what did that son learn? Right? What kind of trauma does he have? What's going on in his life? Right? So this epidemic that has risen with men killing themselves, I think there's a lot of moving parts to it. In my opinion, there's different reasons for different folks. Somebody goes to war, police officer, a firefighter that saw some people burned to death or something of that sort, that they just never really dealt with that. I could see that. Yes. Some child abuse. And then I could just see wrong seeds just planted in their brain. Okay. Broken home. No, they were never abused, but it's just a broken home. And everything that society's pushing out there, all these medications with all these side effects, and you're not a leader. It's just everything is being stripped from you as a man. Nobody's telling you how to be a man or teaching you how to be a man or showing you how to be a man. Maybe somebody might tell you something here and there, but you need to live with that man, and these video games that have really taken over keeps you inside. You're not outside. You're not cycling. You're not running. You're not, hanging out with your boys and slap boxing and wrestling and let's go to the mountains and ride some mountain bikes and something like that, man. That's really, really good for your mental health. As a matter of fact, this term mental health has really exploded, but nobody is really asking why. It's just take care of your mental health. Oh, why do we have such a problem with mental health today than ever before? And some might say, like, no, we've always had it. It's just we just now found out about it. It could be. I doubt it, because suicides are up exponentially. So go for it, Fred.
Well, no, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think all three of us, I mean, Robert and myself first, we touched on it about being feminized. That men are being feminized, and then you took it there. I mean, you really went there with it, bro. And I think we're all on the same page when it comes to that, because it starts off where the father's minimized. He's made to look weak, like, oh, I don't need you, and then it goes from there. So I think we came full circle, at least on that part. As far as the gamers and so on and so forth, bro, like, you're absolutely correct on that, because you got kids today that don't leave the house.
Right.
That's got to be bad.
When I was 17, 18 years old, whatever, or as soon as I got my set of wheels, I was out, man. I was out and about. I was trying to get in where I could fit in anywhere, and you guys, I'm not going to get graphic. You guys know what I'm talking about. I mean, that just came with the nature of the beast. You have kids today that no longer even pursue that. Haven't even gotten to that point yet, and they're way past their teens or so on and so forth. What are we doing here? Seriously, at the end of the day, what are we really doing here? And you guys are right. I mean, I have to agree with that, man. That it's this whole feminine thing, this whole and look, I'm not knocking women. I'm not trying to be a male chauvinist pig here, but this whole women empowerment, man, it's really destroying a whole lot of us out here, man. A whole lot of us. And I say all of us as men, not in a personal way, but just as men. And it's a false dream, man. It's seriously a false dream. That's not going to go anywhere. I will say this, though. When we talked about the 100 men against the gorilla, I did mention we got all bum rush it to get it. We're going to lose a few, but we got to keep sticking to it and bum rush them. And
you did, Fred. You did, yeah.
So that's the thing. It's not like that. Oh, you get him, Jordan. Come on, Robert, get him. And then I'm in the back like, okay, I'll jump in when they got him down. No. It means bum rush him, bro.
I was talking about when that first blew up. I wasn't doing YouTube like that last year, but I was talking to so many other people like, hey man, that was so interesting, and everybody just kept telling me the same thing. And I kept telling them, okay, but if we had to do it, think of whatever you have to think of. But your family's gonna die or something. But if we had to do it, oh man, you know what? I think as soon as everybody sees what they do to the first person, everybody, regardless of anything, they're out of there. And I just kind of thought, man, you know what? I don't think that would be men's mentality 1,000 years ago, man. I think they would actually come up with strategy and say like, okay, we're gonna ride till we die, man. Okay, we're gonna take this thing down, and maybe we fail, but yeah, I just I'm not into that anymore. That, oh, you know what, us men, we're being raised to be macho and everything. Because I don't think that's the case here. I don't think that's
going back to those video games that you were talking about, Fred. That's just brain rot, man. I know kids who will spend the whole weekend playing those games.
Yes.
Have no interaction with people from the outside. When they do it, they're on their mic. You know what I mean? A lot of those games are violent, right? Yeah. So you're killing people or you're being killed. That's got to be weighing in on you when you're doing that constantly for 16 hours. You know what I mean? I think that's another place where, a lot of these young men, their value of life is through a video game. I died, but I get to play the next day. Well, when you commit suicide, you don't get to play again.
Yeah, exactly.
Game over. Right? And going back to what Ed was saying about all these interactions, man, I was just trying to say, remember when we were young and you went to a friend's house and I can remember dads coming home and, why do I got 6 bikes out of my front yard? Hey, it's time to go home. House.
Yeah.
You have to go to your house. Now you don't have to. No. All this isolation can't be good for you. It can't. Playing a game for 18 hours on a mic with somebody from another country that you're never going to have to interact with again can't be good for you. You don't learn how to develop relationships. You don't learn how to talk to people. You don't learn how to interact. It's just not good for you. But we're doing it. And we can't blame just the young people. If you're a parent, why would you allow your son to play a game for 17 hours?
Yeah.
Right.
Monitor that.
Right.
Get out of the house for a little bit, man. Go for a ride,
All of these social media companies, they've admitted they don't let their kid, they have their kid on the phone. They get 1 hour, 45 minutes a day. They don't let them, they know the damaging effects it could have on this.
Yeah. And I was going to answer Denise what she says about there's plenty of independent women. Okay, that's not taking nothing away from it. The thing to me, that part, it's because there's always been that. There's also been independent men who have raised their children. I raised 2 of my nephews on my own and took care of my mother, but nobody ever says, oh, that's a independent man or whatever. I'm not asking for it, but we go unnoticed just because, oh, well, he's a man. There's always been that. What I'm saying is, in today's world, a lot of that, and respectfully so, it's used as a cop out. It's used as something to worship. It's always been that, but now it's become a gimmick. It's become a fad where everybody feels like, oh yeah, I could do this, and we're damaging our youth. I think that's the point. I think that I'm getting from everybody in here. And again, like Robert, I don't want to speak for everybody, but this is what ends up happening. It's a trickle effect. You're damaging, like say for example, you have let's just go with a strong, independent woman that's raising her kids and so on, and she's doing everything she can. Okay, but then you got the man doing the same thing as well. He doesn't get idolized or praised as much as the woman does. But then you have the woman who who has a man, who has a family, has everything intact, but she's not appreciating because she wants to be the independent woman. She feels she's not strong enough when she's actually holding it down at home. Let me get into this real quick, and then I'll jump off of this. Here's the situation with social media, and I'm going to tell you guys what a friend of mine and I, we witnessed something. Okay, on social media, this woman got flowers, right? And she says, he loves me so much, he brought me flowers today, right? Okay, so picture, Johnny or whatever, whatever, Jake, Johnny, David, whatever you want, whatever it is.
Right.
He's
okay.
busting his butt, working his tail off, trying to make ends meet at his home because he's living paycheck to paycheck to provide for his family, right? He comes home, his wife says, hey, that bee, she got herself some flowers today. I can't even get that. I'm not appreciated here, Now she throws it off on the man, right? Now he's felt like, damn, like I feel worthless. I feel like I'm not providing enough. I'm not doing enough. Sorry, my dog's over there barking. Okay, but here's the catch. We come to find out that these flowers weren't given to this person. She went to Googled them, cropped it, filtered it a little bit, added some emojis to it, and passed it off as she had received flowers. But see what it's doing to the people outside watching, what it's doing to the man, what it's doing to the family, what it's doing to whatever. So now she feels like, well, that bee over there, that heifer over there got flowers, and I can't, it was fake. People are believing everything they see on social media, believing everything they hear. Oh, because your girlfriend, and I'm talking when it's woman to woman. Oh, no, you know what? You need this and this and that. But that heifer's single too. What kind of advice can this person bring you? At the end of the day, it's just a down trickle effect too. It just becomes repetitive and vicious, man. It's just destroying everything. And it goes down to, at the end of the day, not only that, the man is feminized, the kids are feminized. Now they don't have a father. That's what it all comes down to, man. And that's on my perspective of it,
Okay. I'm glad you kind of came back. You had lost me, Fred, but okay, it comes back to suicide for feminizing. Okay.
Yeah. No, it comes back to that because he doesn't. The man says, "Oh, because they don't know." Like if you saw it or say, whatever, you're in a relationship and they see it and you're getting 86 for it. You're getting the 3rd-degree burns for it. But yet me on this end over here, I'm saying, hey, this is fake. And I don't know you. This person's getting the 3rd degree. This about to over here is getting the 3rd degree for something, that's fake to begin with, bro. Social media is a lie. It's a highlight reel, bro. It's not real.
Hey, Fred Segura, everybody. Fred Segura. Right.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, man.
End of rant.
Okay. All right. Look, I'm gonna leave it with this, man, because I think people it's getting late here. We gotta wrap it up. But I just want to say this, man. I don't think everybody commits suicide for the same reason. I believe there's different reasons, and one of the reasons that I truly believe is childhood. Whatever happened in your childhood. If you know for a fact that your child or some kid or nephew, niece, whatever it may be, was abused or sexually abused. And I think this counts a little bit more for the men. And here's why. It's not that sexually abusing a little girl is better. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, in that case, I think it is just a little bit tougher. I'm not saying it's not tough for the girl to come out and say that she was sexually molested. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm simply saying is I think it's a little bit more frowned upon for a male to come out and say that he was messed with by another male.
Yeah.
You know, that's that. It again. I don't want to take that away from females to say that it's easy for you chicks, man. You chicks get molested and it's nothing for that's you guys could, you know, talk about it like nothing. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm simply saying, as hard as it is for females to talk about it, is that much harder for men to talk about it. No man wants to admit that, you know, he was messed with by another male. Okay. But if you know that that happened to any of your family members, your kids, whatever it may be, understand there are some deep wounds there that if you do not tend to those wounds, they could be one of these statistics. They can grow up, they can be happy, they can have a good wife, they can have a good life, and everything from the outside for you as a parent, you're like, wow, you know what? Look, my son is having a great life. And next thing you know, he kills himself because you did not tend to those scars. So be wary of that. I think that's one of the reasons. I think this happens a heck of a lot more, a hell of a lot more than we ever know about, because a lot of it happens within family.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that. If it does happen, just stopping it is not enough. That kid needs help. That kid is not okay. It just doesn't get forgotten. It just doesn't get swept under the rug. And it could be 30, 40 years from now where you're thinking they're successful. They got a good job. They got a good wife. They got some good kids. They're on their way. And they got the extension cord out and hung themselves from the ceiling fan. So that child needs some deep therapy. They need to be worked on. So along with so many other things out there, PTSD, along with so many other things. But gentlemen, it's getting late. We got to wrap it up. So I'm going to give you guys any last words. I'll start with you, Robert. Any last words, brother, on this subject, and anything else that you want to say, Carnal?
No, good conversation. You know, I think, like you said, I agree with you. You know, no man wants to admit that a man did inappropriate things to him. You know what I mean? It's looked upon. You know, it's almost looked upon with some shame, even if they didn't have a chance. You know what I mean? It's just no man wants to admit that, and a lot of men won't even want to go get therapy for that because they don't want to admit it to a therapist, right? It's something that they hold down, and it's like a bomb waiting to just explode. But I do want to finish with just this: whoever you are, if you're watching, if you know somebody, just man, this suicide's real. You know what I mean? Just if you know anybody who's going through something, if you're going through something, just know it can get better. It can get better. Life is so precious, man. You don't want to take I don't know, man. It's just life is so precious. I don't want to say take the easy way out, because sometimes facing your problems, they're hard. Life is hard sometimes for no reason. But you got to face those demons. You got to face your problems. And you know, who knows? Maybe you'll build some character. Maybe you'll build some strength. Maybe you'll be able to help the next person. But don't give up on life. It's too precious. If you're going through anything out there, just know life is precious. And if you're struggling with somebody, if you're struggling with anything, talk to somebody. Talk to somebody. And God bless anybody out there who's lost anybody. And God bless anybody out there who's struggling with this epidemic of suicide. You know, don't give into it. And everybody, thank you for allowing me to speak on the subject. Ed, thank you, and Fred, always thank you as well.
Thank you.
Amen, amen. Fred?
Mine is simple, bro. Men rule the world and women ain't nothing. No, not for real. No, I'm kidding. No, seriously, man. Thank you, Robert. That's touching, man. That's a very serious thing. I will say this. Look, again, social media is a highlight reel. Don't live your life on it. and like Robert said, if you feel you're at the end of something, man, it's never over, man. There's always, and take it from somebody like, and I'll speak for myself on this. I've been through some very hard things, man, very hard things in my life that I wouldn't wish on anybody, and yet I'm still here to be able to talk about it, you know. And that's the thing, man, because in the end, people have asked me, if you could change anything, what would you change? I wouldn't change anything because it made me who I am today. You know, so stick with it, man. Even though when it seems like it's at no, you know, there's no way out. Trust what we all tell you. There's a way out. And again, don't be afraid to seek help. Don't be afraid to call somebody. I mean, shoot. I mean, even message any of us on, you know, or you can message me on social media. I mean, whichever. That's all I'm saying. Or call somebody that can help you. Don't be afraid of that, man, and don't give up because like we all say, life is beautiful, man. So yeah, that's it, man.
And my final words is this: to anybody that doesn't struggle with suicide and stuff, you got to play your part. I understand that you're trying to make people feel good, but when somebody kills themselves, you might refrain from saying they're in a better place now. That's not a good message to throw out there, because that's giving the message that if there's anybody that is suicidal, you just go ahead and gave them the, oh, okay, they're in a better place, so I'm going to go ahead and whack myself. I understand that you're trying to tell the parents or whomever it may be that, hey, you know what? You're trying to make them feel as good as you can. I would refrain from saying that. I hear that pretty often. Hey, they're not suffering anymore. Stop saying those things, por favor. Give them a hug. Be there for them, but stop saying those things. Stop saying they're in a better place. Stop saying they're not suffering anymore. I get it. You're trying to tend to their heart and their feelings, but you're sending that message out there for those that are thinking about suicide to go ahead and kill themselves because they're struggling. And it's like, oh, okay, so the suffering is gone. If I just, you know, hang myself or jump off a building or something, or you know, I'll go to a better place. Knock that off. Again, I understand you're not doing it with malice. I get that part. If you do have some sort of trauma, whatever it may be, if you are thinking about suicide, if you are anything of that sort, it's a suicide, killing yourself is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Okay. Is there light on the other side? Well, you need to make that light for you. And the good news is that you have the power to do that. Okay. You have the power to do that. But you need to believe in yourself to get that power. Do not allow the enemy to take control, to take your life out. Okay. You have control of your life. You have free will. You can turn your life around, and there can be light at the end of the tunnel if you're willing to put in that work.
Yeah.
Okay. So you control that. With that, God bless everybody. It's unfortunate that suicide rates amongst men is on the rise. It's a crisis, and you know, if we bummed anybody out, hey, you know, sometimes we're serious, sometimes we talk about some fun stuff. I mean, this one took us past the 2-hour mark, and I felt like we could have gone a little bit more, but we're gonna end it right there. And I promise you guys, everybody watching, Men Rule the World. We do this once a month. Next month's Men Rule the World, we're gonna do some fun stuff. All right, we're gonna get into some fun stuff. So with all that, hey, that is my man Fred Segura from Two-Face Entertainment, Chicano high school teacher from San Jose, Mr. Fred Segura. Cholo Trucker, men rule the world. Be proud to be a man.
Always.
We'll catch you guys next month.
Sonic Boom!
Finish him. Game over.